Congratulations to, oh, sorry. Congratulations to everybody who took a chip, who had a birthday. This is not always easy, but it is easier than the alternative. If you're here, you belong in this room, and we belong together. Really grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous for changing my life. I'd say the biggest thing is getting to know that I needed a higher power and something outside of myself, because I was self-willed on life. I was born in 1960. My sobriety date was June of 91. And I've been doing this a little bit of time. I hope I can do a lot more. My life has improved immeasurably. Just quickly, the first time I drank, I was 6 or 7 years old. I was at a friend's parents' house, and they were famous for their cocktail parties. They were making blender drinks that night. They were like strawberry daiquiris, and people were in like all states of disarray in that house. It was great. I loved it. It was chaos, and I felt right at home. So this woman passed out, and it may have been a lazy boy, but it was some sort of a wing chair or armchair. And she was sitting there, and she had one of these drinks in her hand. So she was passed out, and I went and took it out of her hand, and I drank it in the bathroom. And because I'm an alcoholic and an addict, I put it back. And what happened was his dad came back and saw that her drink was empty and said, well, can I refill you? She said, oh yeah, sure. And I drank 4 or 5 that way. Same method, once it worked once, I was just keep hitting the button. So the last thing that I remember that night was that they had stripped me down because I was puking all over the house, and they put me in the bathtub, and they laid me on my side so I wouldn't choke myself. And the next thing I remembered, I awoke in my friend's bedroom with no idea how I got there, and wearing pajamas with feet on them. And that I didn't know, So that pretty much typifies my experience drinking. I started at an early age, and I was pretty fucked up, and I managed to continue to do that for a long time. I got sober at 30. Quickly, like things in my childhood. When I was 12 years old, I just hit puberty, so I was getting to be interested in girls. But I had a summer camp counselor who was training to be a nurse. She was 19, and she decided that she was going to have sex with me on summer. So I did that, on the QT. And at the end of the summer, she pulled out a billfold, one of those with the accordion photographs that just sort of dropped out. And she said to me, these are pictures of my sisters and all of their children, illegitimate children, right? And I mean, she was beautiful, this girl, but she was my counselor, And she said, I want to have a baby, and I want it to look just like you. And I remember the first thing I said to her is, I can't have a baby, I am a baby, And at that point, she said, well, then I'm not going to see you. And I knew she lived somewhere in New York City. Now, at this time, I was living in Connecticut, and everybody here calls me New York John, because I've lived in New York until this last year, since 1985. No, I take that back. I moved in 79 to New York, so it's a good long while ago. But anyway, I knew she lived in New York, so when I was supposed to be at soccer practice, I would get on the Conrail, they called it, the commuter line, into New York, which landed at Grand Central Station. And I would get out, and I would wander around the streets of New York crying, looking for this woman, because my dad had hammered home the idea from a very early age that if I had a child, I had to do the right thing and be responsible. And that's sort of how my sexual escapades began, and I've had a lot of fucked up relationships. So that goes hand in glove with my drinking. I did way too much drugs, and the smart guy who thought eating 1.5 ounces of mushrooms in one sitting was a good idea. Walked around naked for 24 hours, got called into the dean's office. She said, I had a very interesting night last night. I didn't get thrown out because I was doing really well. At the end of college, all my friends said, "Shh, I should have partied as much as you did," when they saw my GPA. So I functioned. I mean, I wrote 10 papers in 72 hours snorting Christmas trees so that I could stay awake. And I stayed awake without just some naps, but pretty much for 72 hours. I wrote 10 papers of anywhere from 7 to 36 pages, so that I would be invited back after my sophomore year. You know, fast forward, I got into AA. My Eskimo, I knew I had a drinking problem, always. I knew, from the first drink, I knew I was doing something wrong for me. And it didn't always make me feel good, or there were moments of euphoria, I guess you would call it. And it was great because I could get women in bed, you know, but it was sort of a social lubricant because I was always felt like a misfit. I grew up in a town of 42,000 people, and we were the only family of color who wasn't either cutting lawns or making up beds or being a nanny. And a lot of people made it very clear they didn't want us there. My father thought he was doing a great thing because it was the best school district in the country, in the richest county, and he grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Ohio with a lot of a network. I had no network. And even my best friend, actually, who I was milk monitors with in kindergarten, who later wound up to hold up a high position in civil rights, told me, you know, over dinner that he, because he was Jewish, and they were always looking for the horns on his head, you know, he said, well, I joined in sometimes when they did the nigger thing just so I could fit in over dinner. And I remember saying to him, I shared this with Pat. It was the first time I shared it in a very, very long time, but I looked at him and it just shocked me. And then I thought about it some more. And I remembered in Life Saving, they said, well, you know, if you see somebody drowning, look how big they are. Think about how strong a swimmer you are. Don't go out there unless you know you can bring them back, because 2 people drowning is worse than 1. And I looked at him across the dinner table. You know, this was maybe 8 years ago. You know, we're adults now. I'm going to be 63 in December. But I said to him, 2 people drowning is worse than 1. He didn't have to suffer. I did. You know, and that's a lot like my alcoholism, I guess. And the beautiful part about this program is that my demons become your angels, and vice versa. You know, the suffering that we went through is not wasted whenever we manage to share it honestly. Some good comes out of it instead of just more suffering. And I'm convinced of that. I got a new sponsor lately. I've been looking for one for a long time. I had a sponsor for 24 years. My wife grew up in his household. She's got 37 years, and her sponsor was his wife. My kids called them Grandpa and Grandma, and it was a really hard act to follow. And I sort of drifted between people. I called my sponsor for a long time, and finally found somebody here, and he had more time than me, but I shook the man's hand about 3 times, and he never hugged him. And there's something about that spiritual component and the sort of simpatico in a sponsor, you know, that I was missing. And I finally found somebody I'm going to have lunch with again on Friday, and who I really respect.
Right on.
And that's been a huge thing for me, because I've been sort of in the hinterlands of recovery without a sponsor that I've had that relationship with. Anybody who doesn't have a sponsor, if there is anyone in the room, get one. It will change your life. You know, I went on the BMR retreat with these guys, and there are a lot of people in this room. I'm sorry I didn't get up with the celebrants for your birthdays. Congratulations again. I just don't know what we're doing. You know, I haven't been here that long, and I haven't found this meeting for that long. But this is my home group. You know, I belong here. I feel, and I hope you guys will eventually, if you don't already. You know, we're the lucky ones. You know, we're all on the bonus menu. There's nothing wrong with any day today because I'm still alive, and I have a chance because I'm not drinking or doing drugs. You know, I made some notes because I don't always know what to do with this. But yeah, my sponsor's voice changed. It replaced some of what my other sponsor, who I had for 24 years, used to call the chattering monkeys. You know, the noise in my head. I had a guy who was asking me to sponsor him, and every 3 months or so, he'd come back and say, will you sponsor me? Will you take me through the steps? It's been dry for 1.5 years, and the guy's miserable. And finally, the last time he looked at me and he said, can you just, I can't get any serenity. I can't get any peace. And he was hysterical almost. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, you want the noise to stop. And he said, exactly. I said, you kind of have to do the work. You know, if you really want to do the steps, I'll do them with you, but it doesn't seem like you really want what I have. And I can't make you want it, you know. Yeah, so I wanted to talk tonight about defects of character. Okay, I gotta watch my time. And, you know, I'm a very insecure person. I need to be right. I speak when listening might be more effective. I have a temper, and I have a lot of self-centered thinking. And these are all things that, you know, the 7th step tells me that I have to, I mean, when I pray, I guess those are the things I pray for, relief from. And I think that's what the program asks me to do. And when I have a 10th step to do, it's usually because of one of those things. You know, it says somewhere in the 12 and 12 that all of these things are character assets out of their right proportion. And I really think that's true. At least for me as an alcoholic, I was sort of like a lobster. I had the one really big claw and the little one over here like a T-Rex. And I would always brandish the big one and say, see, I got a big one. You know, but meanwhile, I wasn't doing any work over here, and I just sort of said, fuck you, you need to do that. You know, and I liked that. I knew the work needed to be done. You know, I remember when I was first coming around, there was a guy who used to come up to me when I was counting days, some of the people in this room, and he would shake me by both shoulders. I was fucking vibrating. It took me 1.5 years to detox. I mean, I snorted a lot of coke, did a lot of hallucinogens, and did a lot of other things that really literally, I mean, it was like coming out of my system. I can't explain it. I don't know the science behind it, but I can tell you I felt high a lot for the first 1.5 years. And I don't know if it was my fat stores or what happens with all that. I don't know the science, but I know what I felt. And it was really difficult to stay sober when those feelings hit me. But he would shake me by both shoulders and say, John, you're living in a mansion and you've locked yourself in one room. That stuck. There were other things that people said to me. One guy would come up to me and shake me. He also shook me. People shook me, you know. And he would say, John, how free do you want to be? So I'd go, I don't know. He'd say, you're as free as you want to be. That was one of my messages, you know. Hey, give me these things these are the voices now that I hear. And I owe them to each one of you as a face for some tool or for some life raft, I guess, in the sort of turgid sea of my daily life that makes it better, you know, instead of more painful, like when I drink and take drugs. Yeah, there was a woman also, her name was Barbara Segre. She's, I'm sure, dead by now because she had 43 years when I was just counting days. But she was a nurse by trade, and she had a wonderful bedside manner. She was like the person people wanted to be with, you know, when they were making their transition to whatever's after this life. And she would walk by me while I was, you know, complaining to somebody about something that was going on with me. And she'd say very gently as she went to the coffee urn, John, utilize, don't analyze. And she'd just keep walking. I'd be like, okay. And I'd sort of stop me. And then I'd start in again about whatever the bullshit was that was going on. And as she came back from the coffee urn, she would say, John, put down the bat and pick up the feather. Those things stick with you, man. Those are things that change every day that I'm alive and sober, you know, and they're like gems. I mean, alcoholics almost to a person are incredibly smart and gifted. You have to be to get drugs when we got drugs, or to get drinks when we got drinks. You go put an alcoholic in an article, they'll find a drink. They'll find the crack, they'll find whatever else they want. I've tried them all. I know we can do it. But it says also somewhere in the also in the Quiet 12, it says that, I forget I'm going to let that one slide because I don't remember the exact verbiage. Yeah, in terms of honesty, I have a lot of issues with that. Still, I mean, there's a friend of mine who's one of Tom's sponsees named Danny, scuba dives. I love this guy. He's the guy who brought me here to this meeting for the first time. He was talking about scuba diving, and I was like, yeah, scuba. I never fucking scubaed once in my life. I don't even know why I said it. I have no clue. But it's like, sometimes I don't know which head is going to come out of the Jack in the Box, but it just fucking does. And those are the things where I'm like, I had to go up to him later. It was about 10 minutes later. I was like, I haven't fucking scuba ever in my life, but I want to do it with you. That was a better solution to the same situation. But it took me a while to get to that place. And I think that's like a lot of my recovery. I don't do this stuff instantly. I definitely don't. But I have enough sober voices today in here instead of the crazy ones that sometimes on a good day I can get around to it more of the time than less of the time, which I love. You guys saw me when I came in here. I was fucking wound tight as a Timex about my daughter and school and all of that stuff. And I came back the next week and I talked to Tom, and Tom did me a huge favor. He said, well, what step are you on? Everybody else was giving me attaboys. Oh, you did the right thing. Every meeting I went to, that's all people said. You did the right thing. But I felt like shit, so I knew I didn't do the right thing. And it says somewhere in the literature that if you feel wrong, then there's some work to do in you. Not anybody else has to change. And really that hit home. So when I feel discomfort, I know there's something I got to work on. And that's sometimes the hard part because it's really easy for me to launch into an argument, and I'm very persuasive. I need to be right. So the easy thing to do is take your inventory and tell you how I know the right shit. And that doesn't turn out so good generally. So, I try to be suggestible, and on a good day that happens. Anyway, yeah, the retreat was fantastic. I got to know a lot of you. I am very grateful for that. I moved from New York a little over a year ago, and I felt very disconnected. I went to my first meeting, and the guy said, I have a new girlfriend and a new Jeep, A is the shit. And everybody in the room did this. I said, fuck you assholes, I'm leaving now. This is not AA. And so for a year I didn't go to meetings. That's the smart guy, right? That's the alcoholic in me. Fuck you, watch this, I'm gonna hurt myself. And that's what I did. After a year of not going to meetings, because I hadn't been here, I didn't know the meetings, I knew everybody knew. I couldn't walk down the block without seeing 4 or 5 fucking people that I knew in the program, having a chit chat, maybe having a smoke together, going and buying a soda or a sandwich. No, it's not like that here. I could get in my car, there was effort involved. I don't like that, I'm an alcoholic. And then there was COVID. That was a great excuse. I can isolate, there's COVID, and I have to drive. These meetings suck. So, yeah, that's the way I approached it. And it didn't work out so good. My nephew came over and he had some new exotic beer, and it was a very tall can, and it was white, and it had gold embellishments on it. And he said, this shit is amazing. You gotta taste it, Uncle John. And I was like, yeah, okay. I could probably have a sip. And then I walked into the kitchen where my wife was making dinner for us all. And I said to her, yeah, can I take a sip? He wants me to take a sip. Can I take a sip of this? And she looked at me and said, honey, if you want to, you can. But you better start counting days again. But if you want to, if that's going to make you happy, go ahead. And I walked back and I handed him the can and I said, you know what, I can't take a sip, but thanks for offering. And again, that's like the voices of other people are the life raft of AA. I was at Barstool Mountain, I tried to do it myself, and again, it didn't work out so good. So I guess I will close with one thing. There's a guy who's going out with his date, and he gets home with her, he starts eating her out, and she hears him and he says, man, you got a big pussy. Man, you got a big pussy. Man, you got a big pussy. And she says, well, yeah, but why'd you say it 3 times? He said, I didn't. And keeps eating. Yeah. And that's a lot like my recovery, basically. It's much bigger than I thought it was going to be, but I keep eating. So that's it, thanks.